Okay, we've got a rather late start. And as you can see from your programs, we're going to, the session is about reporting war. Reporting war is reporting, but it's very much a different kind of reporting and takes different skills and experience. Okay. And we're extremely lucky to have three men who are on the panel who have been for many years and in many places war correspondents, war reporters. There's Ionut Lordakescu. Thank you. on the far left, Mircea Barbu in the center, and Vadim Girder next to me. They've all got extensive experience in war reporting, and I'm going to ask Mircea to start first.
So, once again, thank you for having us and for creating this space to debate something that we have in theory, but in practice we don't really have. Next to me, you have two war correspondents that are war correspondents for international media agencies, and I'm a freelance journalist who struggles to cover wars for both mostly national media, but also for international outlets. So obviously, while we have this conversation, I think it's good and healthy and honest to keep in mind that we do not have a lot of war correspondent tradition in Romania. What we have is bits and bobs here and there. And since the lights are down, I'm just going to briefly make you aware that on the screens you'll see Vadim's photos, mostly from Ukraine.
They're from Ukraine, I think the Syrian border and the former Yugoslavia.
So throughout the conversation, I hope that kind of inspires you or acts as a backdrop for our conversations, for our session of questions and answers. I just wanted to, because John, you asked me before this conversation, what motivates me personally to do war journalism. And I think it's a discussion that I want to pick up based on the conversation some of our young colleagues had yesterday, or raised the question of how to get into this job, not necessarily war reporting, journalism in general, how to be gainfully employed and make a living out of it, and what sort of motivation you have. And there were two thoughts, right, as far as I remember, or at least two sides of the debate. People who said you have to do it regardless of the financial incentive for the values in it, and some people said no, you have to make some money. I'm not gonna go over it, but I want to just start from that point and say that what motivated me, and I'm gonna be very honest with you, wasn't a healthy, good reason. The reason I started doing journalism is because war journalism, so let me rephrase that. The reason I started doing war journalism was because I was seeking validation. And I'm going to be very honest with you, and I know a lot of journalists who did the same thing. Not just in war journalism, in general. And looking back, after about 16, 17 years of journalism, it wasn't the right reason, but it kept me going at 24, 25 years old, enough to grow out of it, and at one point seek other values in my work. But it was adrenaline junkie. I love the adrenaline of war zones. It doesn't compare with anything. It's very strong, very powerful, and you will find that even doing other types of journalists, you get that rush, you get that excitement of a good story, or amazing access, or a great source, or a great scoop, and it fuels your brain. And if you're very young, it messes with you. Also validation. I'm not gonna lie, it was stroking my ego at 26, 27 to go into a bar and say, oh, I'm a war journalist, look at me. Again, it wasn't the healthy reasons, but it's what kept me going throughout my early years of this career, if you can call it a career. Again, I'm saying we're struggling to have war journalism in Romania. And eventually, I think, I should hope so, I grew out of it. So that's what motivates me. A number of reasons, some better than others, some good, some bad. But it kept me going, and it got me to the point where I'm at now. And I think you also asked me about courage and fear.
Yes.
And it's a question that I get a lot. I'm sure my colleagues here get the same question. Aren't you afraid? And obviously, of course I'm afraid. The simple answer is yes. But it's the type of fear that comes from my personality that doesn't block me, that doesn't make me stand still in front of danger. Some people rush to a danger zone or to a crisis situations. Some run away and some stay still. These are pretty much the three reactions you can have in front of danger. I'm the kind of personality that if I hear an explosion outside now, I'll probably steal Vadim's camera or grab my phone, go outside and start taking photos or video. That's how my brain works. It was before journalism, and I just managed to find a job where I can channel this type of reaction into something I should hope constructive in the public service and that helps other people. That's not to say that I rush carelessly to danger. I've learned through mistakes, many mistakes, that I should be careful how I go about it, how much I stay there, what do I do while I'm actually covering a crisis. But that's a different conversation. Touching on that and kind of closing this sort of brief open statement and allowing my colleagues as well to share their thoughts, I want to open this discussion to you and ask you a question about, and I ask this question I ask myself continuously: how much of my war journalism, how much of the war journalism you follow and you're interested in, do you think it's bravery, and how much is bravado? And it's an open question to think throughout the panel session.
Yeah, thank you. Jonut, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so I would like to start with something that Mircea underlined, that me and Vadim, we work for two international news agencies, and Mircea is a freelancer, and there's a big difference in the way we do things and in the privileges we have. And I think it's fair to say that it comes easier for us, because, for example, I work for AFP, Agence France Presse, and whenever I go to a war zone, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that often, just so you know. That's why the label of war journalist, it's not something I deal very easily with. But every time it happens for me, I'm just trying to, I'll do a short parenthesis. I'm trying to explain to you how international news agency works, because I think it's interesting for you to understand the logistics of how we do it, the process behind it, because yeah, I think it's a big part of the job. So yeah, for me, for example, everything is, I just have to pick up my camera. I'm a video journalist, so I just take my camera and I have a plane ticket or a train ticket booked for me. I have accommodation. I have everything. I just have to focus on doing my job and staying safe. So that's the privilege of working at a big news agency. And I think Vadim can confirm, because it's also the case for him. And when it comes to Mircea and other freelancers, the hassle it's much bigger. He has to think about the money he needs for food, for train, for whatever. And usually you are paid after, if I'm right, Mircea, after you do the job, you get no money in advance. So that makes it horribly complicated. So I'm very much aware of my privilege for working for AFP. Other than that, yeah, I would like to turn this this session a bit on its head, and I have no like wise thing to say because fundamentally I'm not a wise guy. It's the reason why I'm doing this job. So I'm gonna try and turn it a bit on his head. So I wish to receive some questions from you as soon as possible, and just don't be shy. There's no such thing as a silly question, so you can ask us everything. So yeah, I'll let Vadim, because one of the main reasons I'm here is also to listen to Vadim. So
Thanks, Jonut, thank you for your modesty, which I'm sure isn't deserved. Vadim.
Yeah, I want to start by thanking the Ratio Foundation for having us here. I'm very grateful. It was a great surprise, and since my colleagues touched on most of the important things that were to be said as an opener, I also want to say that I think the most important thing, given the fact that it's quite hard to get all these people in a room, is that I would like you to ask any question that you can think of. It may be related to war journalism or not. We're here to answer your questions. This is the focus of this meeting, so it shouldn't be heavy on us speaking about ourselves. And please don't hesitate. If possible, tell us your name when you ask the question, so we can connect better. I would only want to sort of emphasize what was said before. This is a very expensive type of journalism, so it's much easier from Jonut's position or mine, where you have an organization that takes care of the logistics. And the other thing is, don't think that this is something that is, the credit for example, for these images goes only to me. This is the work of a very large team that oftentimes goes unmentioned. And I would put it, and please don't mistake this for modesty, because I'm not modest. I think 90% of the credit goes to those people, and the rest can go to the photographer. So never forget that this is not something that you can achieve on your own. I think I'm like I said, I'm not here to go on about myself. I'm really, really curious and grateful to be in front of you, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thanks, Vadim. I'll just echo what you've said, that these three people there are there to be questioned, to be asked questions of. And I'll start, since I'm in the privileged position, and ask them, you've been doing it now for what, 20 years? 15, 20 years?
Myself for 35.
Hey. Yeah. You're younger than you look.
Darkness helps.
Has it changed much? Has war reporting changed much? Which means have wars changed much in the course of your career? Please.
I don't have 30 years of experience like Vadim, but I will start by saying that by chance or by misfortune, you have three people here who are all of us in Ukraine when the war started. We were in different cities. I was in Kiev, Mircea was in Mariupol, if I'm not wrong, and Vadim was somewhere in Donbas region. So I cannot go back to the war in Yugoslavia like Vadim can, but I can tell you, for example, how the war in Ukraine changed from the first day when it started to the last time I was there, which was in December, and it changed a lot, and it got more dangerous, and it got scarier, and not only weapon-wise, but like also when it comes to the local population. I'll just tell you a very short story, just because I don't want you to imagine that we go to Donbas, for example, and people expect us like some knights on a white horse. On the contrary, especially after a war lasts for many years, and journalists keep going there, and the war doesn't stop, and people ask the legitimate question, why are we talking to you? why are you coming here? Because nothing changes. What are you bringing? What are you offering us? Because not everyone wants to tell their story, and also you go into someone's life in the worst day of their life, and I'm shoving a camera in their face. Even when I'm trying to be as considerate as possible, it's still intrusive. So yeah, there was a moment in 2 summers ago in Bakhmut, which was this frontline city in Ukraine. The Russian and the Ukrainian forces fought for it for for 1 year. It was one of the worst battles of the war. And one day they hit the center of the city. It was a day in which I did everything wrong as a journalist. I wasn't wearing a helmet. I was just I was smoking a cigarette in the center of the city. It was right when the assault started on Bakhmut, and the Russian forces, they dropped what's the name of it? It's a bomb that explodes in the sky, and it releases like hundreds of small other bomblets, and it's a weapon that's prohibited by international conventions, and it shouldn't be used against armies and against local population also. And they dropped it like right in the smack in the middle of the city, and it started falling like rain. And I took cover in a very bad place, and after that it lasted for like 1 minute. There were plenty of victims. I don't want to talk about that. And I was taking cover, and then I woke up, and somebody said, a colleague told me like, run, he has a knife. And I was like, who has a knife? I was just reeling from the shock of the bomb attack. And there was this guy, this local resident of Bakhmut, who had a knife. He was bare-chested with a knife, and he started chasing us, saying that the Russians are bombing the city because of us, because the journalists are there, so they're trying to hit us. And it was it was quite scary, but I don't even blame him. I mean, I understand him to a certain degree. I don't understand the need of physical violence against me, of course. But these are people who have been living there for years, who are traumatized, who are watching Russian media, who have different political and ideological sympathies, and which at the end of the day are traumatized. So this is also an aspect of the job, dealing with people. You want to cover their stories, but there are difficult waters to navigate. And that was a different time of the war, when like conventional weapons were used heavily. But now, for example, in December, it was all about the drones. The drones changed the war fundamentally. You can barely stay. The thought of me being in a frontline city now, like Bakhmut, and staying in the city center and smoking a cigarette in an open air, it's over. You cannot do that anymore. We usually stay like 10, 15 minutes out in the open, and then we seek shelter, because there are both sides. But I was on the Ukrainian side, so I can talk about the Russian drones. They are using so many of them that it's almost impossible for you to work safely out in the open. So when it comes to the war in Ukraine, I can tell you that if I had to pick something, is the way the drone warfare changed the drone and made it, of course, more dangerous for everyone. But because you asked me about our job, it made it increasingly dangerous for us, because you can barely work in Donbass now.
Mircea, do you want to continue that?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna be a bit more philosophical, I think. I've graduated from the Faculty of Philosophy, so I have to make them proud. You asked us all if the war has changed,
Yes.
and I would argue that essentially warfare in its core has not changed since people are waging wars against other people. It's essentially about the same things: religion, land, local feuds, hate, love, all these feelings, all these constructed imaginary ideologies are still there, and they have been there. The way you go about it, of course, has changed, and as Ionuț explained, but I think our role as war journalists is to focus on these reasons and covering the human suffering that war brings into a community, rather than the methods used. So I myself don't know any models of tanks, airplanes, and helicopters, and I pride myself with that ignorance, in the sense that I could care less what model of tank is on the battlefield. What I'm interested in is to talk to the people pushing the buttons, and even more interested to cover the stories of the people affected by what comes out of that barrel from that tank, namely civilians affected by war. And the biggest challenge with that is to get enough people to care about these stories. There's no shortage of human suffering in war zones, but there's an increased shortness of caring for these stories we risk our lives for.
Thank you, Vadim.
I would like to echo on what Mircea said. War hasn't changed in any way. It's basically people who sometimes have nothing against each other, ending up killing each other. Sometimes, basically end up killing each other at the will of some leader, politician, you name it, who has nothing personal in terms of like family or things like this invested in it. And at the end of the day, in my experience, the people that actually do the fighting, they are sometimes even disconnected from the official, so to speak, reason for going to war. It's just a matter of trying to survive. And you have to kill other people you don't know, and they try to kill the people on your side just in order to make it back home. It's a place that is not governed by any sort of fair play. If you end up going there, forget everything you know about international conventions. Ionuț was mentioning forbidden ammunitions and things like that. None of the sides observes these conventions. Never think that you're safe because of the Geneva Convention. The Geneva Convention is something that exists in Geneva, and usually it produces effects after the fact. The one thing that changed in the time I've been doing it is the access, the level of access. Compared to the 90s, so to speak, now it is much more difficult to get to see the real thing, so to speak, because people control the narrative, try to control the narrative, and for that reason, they need to control your access to places. Another important thing, which has implications in the safety, is that if in 1995 it would take, let's say, 5, 6, 7 hours for you to send a picture out, and another 5, 6, 7 hours for it to end up in a newspaper, now this is instant. So if you send a picture, if you take a picture now, you can have it on the wire, and because of the internet, the whole planet will see it within 15, 20 minutes, which would make people aware of where you are. It would make people aware of the effectiveness, for example, of an artillery strike. That's why in Ukraine there are rules that sort of prohibit you from filing images of an airstrike, of an artillery strike, for at least 4 hours after it happened. Because weird as it sounds, you may contribute to the accuracy of a second shot, of a second strike, if you send those pictures immediately. So you find yourself, I mean, I really questioned many times what I'm doing, because all of these rules which have a thinking behind them. I mean, like I said, I don't think there's anyone in this room that would like to go home and say, look, I took a good picture, but because of that, 20 more people died because I sort of contributed to adjusting a second strike. But on the other hand, you wonder how much is really real. I mean, do you really see the whole truth? Because you don't have access, unless it's accidental, you don't have access to things in real time. Now, I talk too much. This is something that I noticed and I'm trying to cure. And I would like to repeat the invitation for you people to raise your hands and ask us. I mean, we are all in the same boat. Don't imagine that you are in any way different as a human being, as a professional from us. So,
A video first, and then over there. Yeah.
Thank you. So I will basically force Vadim to speak more. I know he likes it. You can see it on his face. So my question would be, if you look back to the 35-year younger Vadim, now with your head, with your brain, with the things you have in it right now, what do you think that you gathered from this, basically a lifetime's experience in between these, shocking events? And I mean, you've been basically everywhere where there was a war for the last 35 years. Of course, it's not really everywhere, but almost everywhere. Let's put it like this. So you've seen basically all the armed conflicts of the world for the last 35 years. And I'm wondering, how do you look at yourself now? How are you looking at the young Vadim who was going in the Yugoslavian war? What were you equipped with back then? And, what changed you? What was the armory that you gathered throughout the years, professionally and also personally? This would be my question. And I want to thank you for this, and thank you for talking.
Yeah, good question. How have you changed in these 35 years?
well, I think, I mean, it's very hard to put in a few sentences. At the very beginning, at the very beginning, we were talking last night amongst us, and I told them that I mean, the first conflict that I covered was the civil war between Moldova and Transnistria, and I was like, I think 19 or still 18 at the time, and I did it for all the possible wrong reasons that you can imagine. I mean, it had nothing to do with the mission this sort of work has to be. It was, I told them yesterday, it was exactly what Mircea told you. It was a way to probably feel special, to be the one who has seen horrors and gets more attention in the room when you sit down with your friends. And I mean, I can't think of a worse reason to start this job than this. It was also a conflict that did not wake me up, because I didn't witness any active fighting and all that, and it was a strange conflict. I mean, there were many days when fighting would end by 6 p.m. and combatants would cross the lines and sometimes share food or things like that, and they would address each other with the fascists and the communists, and it was almost as if it was a joke if it wasn't for the people in the morgue that you would see. But some people that I know never recover from this, and it's sad, but there are explanations to that. I think I was lucky. I mean, shortly after that, the conflict in Yugoslavia began, and I got to travel there. And because for purely accidental reasons, I did not cover at first fighting, but I was covering the effects of the fighting, as in refugees, civilians killed, children killed. I recovered very fast from the idea that this is some sort of a game that makes you look good at home. And from there on, if you, going back to your question, I think it will never cease to surprise me. I mean, I would probably never understand how in this modern day, because, you know, starting with World War II, if you think, even World War I, there is a significant body of visual evidence to what war means. Still, wars keep happening, and like I said, they are virtually identical. So, you know, I think that everyone who does this secretly hopes, or should hope, that their work will prevent such atrocities from repeating. But unfortunately, there is no evidence that progress is being made in that direction. So I think that although people that know me would not describe me as an optimist, I think that unfortunately I am sort of a pathological optimist, because every time I go, I mean, there were times when I said I'm never going to go back because it's pointless and I will just get loaded with more and more horrible experiences and evidence that there is something fundamentally wrong with humanity if these things keep repeating. But after a while, I again start hoping that, you know, first of all, the war will not start. I mean, it doesn't describe me as a very clever journalist. I don't even see myself really as a journalist. I mean, lots of you here are journalists out of vocation. Maybe a few are by accident. I am a person that ended up in this profession accidentally. The idea is that, like I said, it will not describe me as a very smart man, but even on the 22nd, when I got a call first from Ionuț to tell me that Putin has initiated this operation, as he euphemistically described it, I thought it's not possible. In 2022, something like this cannot repeat. I thought maybe it's going to be a day or two of more intense artillery strikes or something, and then people will sit down and sort this thing as all conflicts. I mean, from the interpersonal conflicts to the larger scale conflict, there is nothing that you cannot sort out by talking to each other. Yet, I mean, look what happened. So I am probably, I mean, I'm not going to deny it, it's a fantastic experience. I mean, you don't see, war brings out, it's a cliche, but it does bring out the worst and best in people. And you get to see very real, uncensored, because people no longer have the time to pretend, to pose, to react in a controlled way. So there is, I mean, if truth is your drug, and I think it should be, I mean, as a journalist, I think that truth should be the only drug that we should never abandon. If truth is your drug, it is the place to get it. But unfortunately, the majority of it is a sad truth, and that doesn't make you a more pleasant person to be around. It does affect in subtle ways that you don't notice at the very beginning, the ways you interact with those close to you, and the hardest effect is on the closest people, the ones who really love you. They get the worst of you somehow, which is really unfair, but it's the way things happen. And that's about it. I don't know if I answered the question, but I tried.
I think you did answer the question, but just to push a little of what the video asked you and what you said yourself, when would you say that after these years, over 30 years of witnessing horrors, that you became a more pessimistic person, perhaps a sadder person? as a personality, I mean, when you're alone or with a family?
A sadder person describes it better. I mean, pessimistic. I don't think I'm pessimistic because, you know, if I was, I would stop doing this. I do think, but again, you shouldn't. I mean, there is a high risk, I think, particularly in this line of journalism, that you make it about yourself. And it shouldn't be that. And you should think, however, I mean, against all odds, against all evidence, I am motivated by the idea that, okay, maybe I'm not going to stop the war, but there is a mission in there. And you would help, or at least some people, perhaps, hopefully, will be held accountable for things they've done there. And perhaps they will, you can't dream that they will never repeat, but you can hope that they will repeat on a smaller scale, or that people would think twice about doing it. Although, as we have seen in the Ukraine war, even if nowadays it's much more complicated to do something and get away completely without a trace, still these things happen. I mean, people don't worry. And another troubling truth is that war crimes are not done by spectacular human beings. They are done by people like you and me. I mean, that is the place where you find out, again with a cliche, what you're made of. War crimes are not necessarily the job of a professional maniac, so to speak. It may be people who lost their friends, their team members, and are broken, and they can't think of another way to get back at faith. Revenge. Yeah.
The same question, Vinny's question to you, Richard, and also to you, Jan. What's the effect? What the effect has been on your nature, on your personality, on your daily life?
Yeah, I'll be very brief. Yeah, I can just mention the toll of returning from a war zone because it's a very important aspect, and I think that in many regards is the hardest part of doing this job, is leaving a war zone after 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, and then going home. And speaking for myself only, there are three feelings I struggle with. The first is it's a weird mix actually. There's relief, of course, because I'm physically out of the danger zone. There's guilt because I have the privilege, the luxury of leaving the war zone when me and my employer decide, while people I've met are still there dealing with the everyday consequences of war. And I had the third one. The third one is and Vadim touched on this briefly, is the lack of emotional availability for the people who love you at home and who are trying to be supportive, and they are trying to help you go through this transitional phase of coming back from a war zone. And as selfish as it sounds, you have no or very few or very little emotional availability for them because you are stuck in a place that you left only physically. And it doesn't happen like it happens in American movies, that you wake up shivering and you have nightmares every night. It's not as dramatic and as cinematic as that. It's just your friend or your girlfriend or your wife asking you to go to a concert, and or somewhere else, and you not being able because you know you cannot enjoy it because you're just there physically for a certain amount of time. So it's basically the toll that it takes on your loved ones, and that's something that I think it never goes away, and it's just a continuous effort of trying to improve, because they shouldn't be the ones dealing with the choices you make in your professional life.
First of all, it's a huge privilege to listen to your stories. My question for you guys is, how do you deal with the propaganda? Ukrainian authorities are very subtle in order to try to control the story. And how do you deal with it? Mircea underlined so many times the ethic aspect of our profession, especially during that kind of journalism.
Like you said, there's a level of, or a degree of propaganda on all sides involved in a conflict, and there are not just two sides. There are many sides, but the main ones, let's take Ukraine for instance, there's definitely a level of propaganda on both sides. How do I deal with it is by not getting myself too close to the story. So in our profession, often when we go to the front line, we go through, we get a press card from the Ukrainian army. We ask the press officer, I want to go to the front line in Kharkiv. And they say, you can go on Thursday, Friday, we'll arrange for you in a few days to be there. When they think it's safe, when they think, like Vadim said, they can control the narrative a little bit better. Both reasons go hand in hand. And you go there. But it's called, by the way, it's called embedded journalism. It's a fairly new thing in war journalism. It's been happening since the war in Iraq, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that was the first time when this notion of being a journalist with the army sort of became very, very predominant. And that's very tricky, because what you end up doing, and I think you saw some of my photos, by the way, not all the photos are Vadim's. I say that because some of the photos are mine, and I'm not a photographer. The ones with the white background, those are my photos from time spent living, eating, sleeping in the same house on the front line with a special commando unit of the Ukrainian army. And that gets you very close to them, this sort of embedded journalism. You sleep with the same people in the same room, you eat with them, they become the people who save your life, or they guard your life at least. And there's a certain degree of empathy with their cause, with, you know, everything that goes beyond the fact that as facts we acknowledge that Ukraine is being invaded by Russia, Ukrainian civilians are the victims of this war, the facts that we established as a society. But the level of propaganda goes into when you witness either staged stuff on the front line that they do for the sake of trying to impress you or trying to tell your story, or the narratives that the state is peddling on both sides. And it's much easier for me personally with the Russian side than it is with the Ukrainian side. The Ukrainians, for the most part, are either more subtle or not as much engaged in this propaganda as the Russians. This is my personal opinion. We might disagree with it. And I've created, and I'm going to end on this, some sort of antibodies when it comes to journalism embedded with the Ukrainian army or on the Ukrainian side, so to speak, by just seeking some or having some sort of a Q&A or a, how should I put it? What do you call the thing? Like a checklist that I go through, and I call it the blue and the red dots. It's from blood cells. And I try to ask myself the questions that the Russian propaganda media will ask me, just to make sure that my reporting is healthy enough, or it's sound enough, or I try to become my own devil's advocate, which is very hard to do, by the way, as a freelance journalist, because I've got to do all these things by myself, be my own editor sometimes, my own reporter. And that's why I can't emphasize enough the need for war journalism to happen in newsrooms, in teams, with people that you can discuss these things editorially. I don't have that luxury. These two guys sometimes have it. Most of the times, I think.
Can I say something? We've rotated these pictures for a while now. Is it okay if we open the light so we can see each other better? Or do you want to, if you want to still see them in a loop, we can, yeah?
Do you want to come back to that question?
I have nothing to add, no.
Who's next?
Yeah, I'd like to ask you, how do you manage to not get emotionally crushed, seeing so much pain, so much suffering, because it must be devastating. For example, when I take interviews from Ukrainian refugees, women and teenagers, I make efforts not to cry, seeing so much suffering and knowing that I can do almost nothing to help. You see so much pain in there. How can you move on? How can you manage to resist emotional resistance?
I think the first thing, it's the first answer is quite easy. It's therapy, and I think we should all do it. So that's the first thing. The second is that it's very hard for you to process these emotions while you're there and you're working, because you're there for 2-3 weeks, whatever. So you're focused on your work. Of course, that doesn't mean you're not empathetic, because if you're not, you shouldn't do this job. But processing all the emotions and all the pain, it's a process that comes after. So.
I don't manage. I never did to not get emotionally crushed. And I didn't do therapy. And I have to say that I think that if you do manage, or if you feel it doesn't affect you, there's something wrong. I mean, I think that in photography, the key ingredient is not what people would call, I don't know, the photographer's experience or talent or things like that. It's the ability to resonate with what happens. This is, I mean, a good photo is not necessarily one of these, I don't know, like a legal document, a legal photographic document. A photo is a vehicle for emotion. And if you don't resonate with all of the intensity, it's not going to be good. I mean, this is what makes it good. The moment you are in sync with what happens, and like I said, you either have to be very strong, but strong has a positive connotation to it, and I don't think it's positive in this context. If you don't resonate, then you shouldn't be doing it. How do you move on? Also, you don't move on. I mean, there was a smart man that said that only the dead have seen the end of war. And a long time ago, so he knew it. How do I push myself? I think that if this person moves on after seeing their dead child and all that, I would be ashamed to say or to think that I am suffering anywhere near what they are suffering. So I try to keep a perspective, and if these people move on, I have to move on too, as much as possible. None of us really moves on, but we are there by choice. You have to remember that they're not there by choice. It is my choice to go there. So it would be completely dishonest and illogical if I would sit here and complain about the trauma and, you know, the emotional disorders. I chose to go there because it has to be also stressed that in agencies, you can turn down these assignments. Nobody is pushing you to go somewhere that involves risking your life or mental health or things like that. So if I go there, it's because I want to go there. And I would not feel comfortable sitting in front of you and saying, look, I'm an emotional wreck after all these things they've put me through. I chose to do this because I believe I can bring even a bit of change.
Uh, Hello, I'm Dana. Wait, is it working? Is it okay? Okay. I have a question, but I'm going to read it, if it's okay. I think that, of course, you went of these war zones to show the truth, and I don't dispute what you have done. What I want to ask is whether you feel there are places where the presence of too many journalists and photographers actually did more harm to those areas, like it was being exploited. If does that exist, and if you have some examples from the field.
It is, but I've got a few examples of maybe journalists behaving the way they shouldn't behave in a conflict zone, whether they were carried away by emotions, adrenaline, whatever. We were actually discussing this example, and Vadim and I remember that scene. It happened during the crash of MH17, 2015? Summer of 2015. A Malaysian airline plane crashed over eastern Ukraine. It was taken down by the pro-Russian forces. Hundreds of people, civilians, all of them died. And they were on their way to a tourist destination from Amsterdam, so nothing to do with the war. The problem was that when we got there, as journalists, I thought at least that by the time I'll get there, the whole place will be closed down by authorities. There'll be fire trucks, police, army, and we will get nowhere near the crash site. The reality was that we drove right into the crash site. One, because it was so big, the plane scattered for kilometers in an empty field and affecting some of the villages. And I'm gonna say something graphic now. There were dead bodies everywhere. Some of them, as they landed, including the chair from the plane, and you could clearly see the people burned, but fairly intact. Luggage everywhere, clothes, stuff that reminded you of the fact that there were children on the plane, just very horrible things. And one of our colleagues, a British journalist, during a live TV dispatch, started going through the suitcase of someone, a victim of that accident, rummaging through and showing it on TV, showing people some of the belongings. I don't know, I mean, the intention, I would imagine, was to connect the audience better with the human suffering, but it was done in a horrible, horrible way. Maybe he got carried away, again, the adrenaline, but it definitely didn't help the story. It didn't help to tell the story. Ethically, it was the wrong thing to do. And indeed, to answer your question, it done more harm than good to that particular situation. And that's the first example that comes to my mind. I'm sure there are others.
I'm not going to think of an example, but I will say that in principle, the more people have access to a situation, the more journalists have access to a situation, the better, because there's more views. A different person will see something that I didn't see, will connect with another aspect that maybe I'm missing. However, as we touched on the way we started this this journey, in these moments, you see where all these people are on this road of evolution that we all walk, the more things we see. And indeed, depending on where you are on that road, some people, I mean, age is not a factor, I have to tell you that. It doesn't mean that if you spend 30 years, 20 years, whatever, depending on how many years, you will be that much the wiser. Sometimes you're not. And you can clearly see where everyone is on that road. And on one hand, yes, it's good that more people have access to a site. On the other hand, it can be deeply embarrassing and traumatizing to witness some of these things. the thing he mentioned, or there are many things that come to mind. And bear in mind that it's absolutely humbling. I mean, I many times ask myself if I could be that generous with a photographer, with a journalist, on what is possibly the most horrible day of my life. I mean, the fact that these people allow us around them, and they would have, you may think that they don't have a choice, they have to because they have to. It's not true. They can always deny our presence there, or make it impossible for us to work. You have to have in mind that you're receiving the greatest gift, and it's huge generosity on their side to let you there. Being insensitive in those moments is absolutely horrible. And in my case, I mean, if I witness this sort of behavior, it harms me as well. And it harms the profession in itself, because as you know, here in like normal journalism, and again, I will have to stress, don't think that it's that different. Doing journalism, for example, on these old people's homes in Romania, or doing war journalism. Yes, because the physical risk is not so clearly present, you may think it's very different, but it's not. I mean, every sensitive matter is the same. So the lack of empathy of one person, a mistake by one of us, would have effects on everyone. Will have effects on the reputation, if I may use this word, it's not the best word, of the profession. I mean, people will say, I know you guys, you just want to be here for a day, get an interesting shot, and you don't actually care. You're not here because you resonate with the fact that I lost my family. You just want a good story for tomorrow. And this hurts the process, because again, you need to bear in mind that all of us, and again, I want to repeat that this is a team effort. Everything is a team effort. I mean, existence is a team sport. You may not see it, but we either all win or we all lose. Like, I don't want to make a stupid analogy with like sports, but if your team loses, it's not going to matter that you scored a goal. The fact that you didn't offer an assist that could have won the match for your team will be remembered, however. So all of us, we do our bit, but in the end, it all builds up into the main purpose, which is the mission. I forgot, and I don't want to forget, you asked about propaganda. Who asked about propaganda? It's difficult, because nowadays, it was never easy, but nowadays you tend to be attached to one side. You don't cross the lines. You couldn't, because you will be seen as a spy. God knows. I mean, the levels of paranoia. The levels of paranoia in war zones really rival the normal levels of Romanian paranoia that we are all used to here. So you may be seen as a propaganda agent. The idea is, as he said, you need to use your judgment, like painfully use your judgment, to see if you are in a situation that qualifies as pure propaganda. Because otherwise, I mean, there is a reason they do this. Obviously, no country would want journalism that would hurt their purpose or would ruin the morale of their citizens or of their troops. They don't want to contribute to that, and there's a good reason for that. I mean, it doesn't make sense. And I had people telling me, depending on how much they hated me, either that not knowingly I contributed to Ukrainian propaganda, or that I actively was an agent of Ukrainian propaganda. You don't worry about those people. I mean, like I said, when I was going to encourage you to ask questions, don't ever worry that people will judge you for what you say, because yes, they will judge you, but their judgment only says things about them, not about you. I mean, you have to do what you do. Yeah. You have to do what you do, and you have to be confident, Alison mentioned earlier, that you did your job properly. You found out to the best of your abilities what happened there, and you reported it as such. From there on, it's out of your control, so you shouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, thank you all very much for what you've been saying. Listening to the three of you now, I'm struck by how lucky I was to cover the Yugoslav wars when one could cross the front lines. I remember a friend of Alison and mine, Victoria Clark, who wrote, like I did in those days, for The Observer, and how she wrote about being in Vukovar one day and Osijek the next, and discovered she'd crossed from covering the Serb side into Hungary, and then the next day to be on the Croatian side, and Serbs didn't seem to mind, and the Croat soldiers didn't seem to mind, and she noticed everyone was eating the same bean soup. His lunch was the same on both sides of the trenches. And what Mircea was saying there about being embedded, in a way, and also to come back to what you just said, Vadim, which is sort of reply to my question, is there a difference between war reporting and peace, and reporting on non-war? Because my own experience from, for example, from Macedonia, one day we could be with Macedonian forces, tanks shelling villages, and then cross to the NLA, the guerrilla partisan force on the other side, being shelled and trying to fight back. And I took that as a young journalist myself then as an example of how to be a journalist in general. That one day you're reporting from one side, and our job is to cross the lines and hear what the other side is saying. So do you think, I mean, Vadim sort of replied to that already, that there is no difference, but, or we're using the same skill set, the same courage, the same empathy in particular, but I wondered if either you would have more thoughts on that, or Mircea or Ionuț would have. Is there a difference between now that information is weaponized and we're all being shot at, we may not be risking our life by taking a brave position or by investigating a different side of a story? But I'm curious what you think.
Very brief. I'll just touch on two things. First of all, because you mentioned the embed, which we all do, it comes with some costs of perspective, to put it so. But what I want to underline is that I think none of us likes doing an embed, because it limits you so much. So everything is like out of your control. You just get to see a slice of the front line, or whichever that, whatever that is. But the thing is that the embed is the only way you can go to some places. You cannot take a car and go by yourself to Kursk or to wherever part of the front line, because it doesn't work like that. You will most probably get shot by one of the sides. So embed is all you have. In Ukraine, in Israel, the same. We couldn't go to the border with Lebanon by ourselves, because the risk of getting shot by the Israeli army is it's high by default, to put it so. And another aspect that I like to underline is just it's a short thing from Israel, but I think it says a lot about covering sites. In Israel, there's a thing that happened to me, and it didn't happen in any other war zone, is that the local population, but also the authorities and the army, every time they stopped me at a checkpoint or to ask for my papers, they kept asking me whose side you're on, and like very bluntly. And it happened to me countless of times, and I ran out of diplomatic answers, and sometimes I just say I'm a cameraman. I just push a button, like Vadim says, it's an elevator that takes pictures. So I have no I have no position. I don't take sides. I went through all of them, but it was a very strange thing for me to hear, and it was a very harsh it was a very harsh reality to face, and it was also quite annoying at at some point. But it says a lot about, because this is somehow the topic of our debate, about us being seen as taking sides and as being combatants and so on and so forth. So yeah, it says a lot about how the Israeli army or the Israeli state is seeing journalists working there. But on the other hand, they let us, with some limitations, go to the West Bank, for example. So the only way we can cover this side of the country was because journalists cannot enter Gaza, was for us to go to the West Bank, where there's also a lot of pain and a lot of violence. So yeah, that's about it.
Ideally, we should still be able to cross the lines, and this is what I would like. Nowadays, it's not possible. Now the question is, you take what is available, and like I said, using all of your skills, and it's really complicated, you bring the bit of truth, your contribution of truth, to the bigger picture, or you do nothing. It is very complicated, as he said, because you are always asked whose side you're on. And frankly, you might not agree with me. I don't think that perfect neutrality exists. I mean, you will have a preference in any matter, not war or things like that. The thing is, and I think this comes with a sort of maturity, what Ovidiu was asking me, what changed, is to realize that these tribal philosophies, you are Orthodox, you're Catholic, you're French, I'm Romanian, they are really outdated. I mean, they did their job at the time, borders and things like that. But I think the only way to move forward is to understand that essentially we are the same nation. And while you may have preferences, because it's normal to be like that, they should not cloud your judgment in order to take a side and be really a part of propaganda. Because obviously you will notice, and like I said, you understand their thinking behind it and all that, but there is truth in everything you see, and you just need to extract it and put it out there with the hope that people will understand that at the end of the day, if you could beam yourself from one trench to the other across the line, in human terms, it's the same people. They have the same worries. They will pay the same price. Countless times I spoke to people who were no longer connected, like I said, with patriotism or the politics behind the conflict. They just wanted this to stop. They wanted to survive. So bear in mind that, I mean, I try, maybe I'm fooling myself, like I said, due to optimism, that the ultimate goal of this mission is to make people understand that we are all the same creature, and that whatever we do, good or bad, will reflect on others. So that's why I think the wise choice is to do something good. Even a small thing, like going from all of these things can be reduced from nations colliding to two people fighting in the street. It's the same. Obviously, the effects of a nation fighting with another nation will have a much wider difference. But if I fight with Ovidiu and we all walk this door upset, we will abuse other people, which in turn will either abuse us back or abuse others that they feel comfortable abusing. It's the same. I mean, the equation is very, very simple. And you need to bear that in mind.
Anybody else on this?
There are questions also here. I think they waited for longer, so. Okay, these guys. I can wait.
Thank you. Is this working?
Just speak up, thank you.
Okay. What I wanted to ask all three of you is, are there any filters, either ethical, technical, or maybe just purely human, that you apply on your work when delivering it to the agencies that you work for or the places you work for? Like, are there any photos that you choose not to send, not to publish because maybe it will do harm? And what are those filters?
I have filters. They don't have to do with the content. I mean, I will not ever filter information out in my work. But I will filter super graphic things. It's an easy example, the plane crash in Ukraine. I did not send any victim that was wearing a recognizable outfit. I have not photographed any, I mean, I did photograph, let me be clear, I did photograph everything. But I did not send anything that would help is the wrong word, a person back in the Netherlands know that their loved ones are dead in the field. I mean, you can go, if you see a hand coming out of a mangled chair, I think it's bad enough. I mean, certainly it's bad enough for me. But I'm not gonna send a hand with a certain ring or with a tattoo that would hit someone back home who hopes, against all odds, that their relative is still alive. I'm not gonna send any image that affects human dignity. A lot of the victims there were naked, which was really strange. I was told that it was because of when the plane lost pressure and the fact that they fell from incredible heights tears everything that is not cotton away. There's no point to send that. So these are the filters. Also, I will never send images. Nowadays, these minders, so to speak, these people that you're embedded with, insist on that. Things that would identify a position geographically, that would help someone see certain things in the background and they could tell where you've been. Also, you may say this is censorship. It is. However, would you like to go to bed thinking that 12 young men have died for you to send a mildly boring picture? You know, you don't want that. So these are the filters. They're not, I mean, there's no filter that has to do with hiding a part of what happened, but there are, against all odds, delicate ways to go about presenting a horrible situation. And this is what you aim for. And it's not aesthetic. I'm sorry to speak for so long. Many people told me that I try to make horrible things look nice. And I do this, I don't know, for artistic reasons or whatever. I try to make them nice as much as possible, but the thinking behind it is that I don't want to hurt people more than they are. And I think that if it's visually pleasant, it's a more effective vehicle for the emotion and for the information. Yeah. I mean, you're not the police photographer that does the crime scene. Those have a purpose as well. They can serve as evidence, but it's not what you're after.
Leonid.
I don't have a lot to add. I would say that the filters, especially in our line of job, are rather human decency filters rather than professional filters, in the sense that I would never do something that can put someone that I film in danger, because I already have a bad sleep and I don't want it to get worse. So I will never do that. And the second one is it's the personal filter that we all have. It's the automatical one. Is the reason why I frame this shot and not this shot. So it's basically every decision I make whenever I open my camera and I choose to film something, and I do it because I have a personal filter, which I think all of us have, and it doesn't contradict the notion of objectivity or impartiality or however you want to call it. So yeah, that's about it.
I just wanted to add one thing right to that question, is the morality to which you speak, and quite a strong morality, so you take care to filter out things you think will hurt, is that generally shared by all war photographers, or are there people who care much less than you? Is there a kind of an internal struggle on this?
Internal, you mean?
Well,
inside the
Inside-
struggle with other people, or
Yes.
internal inside myself?
No, with other people, with other photographers.
Unfortunately, yes, there are people who care less. Let's put it this way. They don't tell themselves they care less, and frankly, I can only tell you what I feel. I don't know what they feel. Maybe they care as much as me, but they simply have a different view of which is the best road to take to do this. There are people who tell me you can't expect, you put a nice face on war. I don't think I do, but I can't really, maybe they're right. There are people who prefer brutal imagery, and they think brutal imagery will have a bigger impact. It is possible. There are also people who I don't like to remember, who are sometimes, in terms of strictly time, far away on this road that I keep mentioning, that we all walk. Again, you don't have to go to war. You walk this road and you evolve no matter what you do. There are people who simply don't care, who manage to sort of make objects. Look at everything that is in the frame as an item of the composition of their picture. But hopefully they're not many, and I don't think they're the best. Some of them are well known, but I don't think they're the best.
You want to come in more? I think you were down there. You've been, and then Alison. The man down there. No, the man down. Hang on, the man down there.
Yeah, may I?
Of course.
Yeah.
No,
just a
he's
quick
first.
question. Just a quick
He's
question
been up
here.
for a while.
I
beg your pardon.
I already have the microphone. I'll be short. No
Don't worry.
Okay. First of all, thank you for sharing your experience with us. And speaking about my question, I was wondering, how do you prepare technically for taking a shot? Do you have a specific equipment? Do you use the specific settings? How do you work, technically speaking?
Can I go first? So I mostly do video. I'm a multimedia journalist, which is a euphemism for I do everything and everything bad. But I focus on video, and I've learned video by myself, not so well, but self-taught, including editing, because it's a platform that at the moment I feel conveys the message in a more popular way, so it reaches more people, but it's also very costly in terms of resources and time. I started with a camera back in 2009 that I bought saving money working as a bartender in London, the cheapest camera I could find, and lens, and the video was pretty bad back then, the videos I shot, but nonetheless it was a beginning, it was a starting point, and I've learned from mistakes. Now technically I shoot with a Sony A7S3, which is a beautiful thing to work with. It's very expensive, and I'll get to that. With a 24-70 lens, if that matters, if you want to talk technical things. I use all kinds of microphones, but I use an external mic and also a lavalier mic. I found that when it comes to video, sound is more important than the image. People might watch your grainy, shaky image more, but if the sound is bad, they'll just tune out. I'm talking about video now, just that. I edit in Premiere Pro, which I initially stole from a guy. We all have a guy who can install Premiere Pro. Now I pay for it. Just that I'm so afraid that the police will raid my house one day for all kinds of reasons. I've got the dates on my head, the Russians, and the last thing I want is pirated software in my home. But it's I cover that cost. I use Epidemic Sound to illustrate or to edit my music. And when I freelance for media outlets, for instance, when I work with Nick, we do a bit of editing on site, just a rough cut of a news piece, and then we send it to the BBC, and they wrap it up in a bigger package, or the social media team will take it and put all the graphics and logos. We don't have to really worry about that. But Nick lays the voice down. I sit quietly in a corner and edit the shots. He is the one who sort of instruct me, but there's a sort of a communication between the person shooting, and this helps, by the way. If you shoot video, you should also learn how to edit, obviously, but it helps to be also the reporter in one way, because when I go into the field and I start shooting my camera, I know how the piece is gonna look. I know what kind of frames I want, what if I got the soundbite that I need. On the other hand, when you work with someone closely, and I keep mentioning Nick because he's here, when I work with Nick so close and we've been working for so long, I kind of guess what he needs, and he kind of knows that, okay, he got the shots, or he just quickly checks with me, either by looking at me saying, you got it, I got it, or verbally saying, do we have everything we need? So that's the technical bit of it. Just one last thing about cost. I got all my equipment after I was covering Ukraine and started a crowdfunding session, whatever. And people tune into my reporting. They loved what I did, or they appreciated what I did. And I managed to get so much money. First of all, it was scary. I thought ANAF will come and knock on my door the next month and put me in jail. They didn't up until now. But I managed to buy all my equipment from a community support. So yes, I'm a freelance journalist. I might not have what these guys have, and they keep saying it, I keep saying it. But these days, if you want to start in this job, or if you want to survive in this job and not rely on media outlets who don't, or who are not able to support a full-time war journalist, there's a community out there. And if you use the platforms from Patreon, from Buy Me a Coffee, all kinds of platforms for crowdfunding, you can build your audience, and trust me, it's sustainable. So, yeah.
Just a second. Listen.
I'll tell you after.
Listen, since he got technical, I would like to say, if you're worried about technology, that for at least 10 years now, if you know what you're doing, technology is so advanced that it's not going to be a limit. Just bear in mind that what we're looking after is to convey, to send information. These days, you can do it with a lot of equipment. You don't need the latest gear. And the picture, in video or stills, the picture is you. This is just an instrument. Don't shift all the focus on the gear. Just, focus on your skills and what you need to do. Obviously, it's good to have the latest equipment. It's good to have someone to back you, like the agencies, because it costs a lot of money. But it can be done on a variety of budgets, if you know what you're doing. I mean, I've seen people do things on a mobile phone that make me feel ashamed. I mean, honestly. And this is great to use. Apart from the fact that if you think I no longer fail technically because I have the latest gear, I still fail much more often than I would like to. And there is nothing to blame. That's a problem with the latest generation equipment. You can no longer say, I didn't have, if I had that, I would have been good. Now you have it, so it's you who failed.
Yeah, I have a question for Vadim and a question for all three of you. The one for you is, when you go to a war zone, when you're on the scene, do you have a mental list of things or of situations that you find yourself looking for, more or less consciously, through your lens? And the question for all of you, so you can think about it while he speaks, was, could you pinpoint the exact moment when you realized that your work has been most impactful? And if you could briefly tell us what that was, I was very curious.
Speaking of the list of things, I don't have a list of things in mind because most of the time I don't know what I will see when I arrive. What I try to focus on is once I get there, and I will use this recent example of the Bucha execution site where those civilians were executed by Russian forces. You have to have in mind that you need, as they need in video, a close-up, a mid-shot, and a wide shot. You need to cover all these angles. I need to be able to have a photograph that places this scene in a recognizable environment with a proper background of buildings or, I don't know, the village where it happened. You need close-ups, you need details and all that. I always, when I look at my pictures, or when someone tells me, oh, this is a good picture, I struggle to be grateful for their compliment because I can only think of the stuff I missed. When I look at that picture, I don't see the picture that I took. I see the picture that I wanted but missed. This is partly pathological because you always want something that you didn't get. It is called perfectionism, but and the other thing that even I forget, that for example, all of the Bucha coverage from the first time I pressed the button and until I ended, it was about 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Why? It was not because I didn't want to invest more time at the scene, but we were not sure if it's completely safe. We were not sure on that day if indeed all of the Russian forces have cleared the area. This is what we heard when we went in, but you're not sure. So you want to do it as quickly as possible. And frankly, if you want to document a crime scene of that size in 5 minutes, there's a lot you need to think of. So there is a checklist. And this is the main worry and the thing that stays with me, if you would like for me to pretend I'm important and traumatized, is the safety of the people that are with me in the car. Again, I have to come back to the fact that there is no way, for example, I would have found that scene without Ukrainian-speaking driver, without a fixer, without people that have to explain other people that are nervous, are upset, that they can trust you. They have very little time to convince some villagers that are in their most stressful time that it's okay to tolerate you there. So I am worried that we're going to step out of the car and they will be careless. They don't have the equipment on. They may step on some ammunition or things like that. So this is the stuff that stays with you at all times. Because at the end of the day, if someone is hurt, nothing is worth that. No picture is worth that.
Which was the moment that you would define as your most impactful picture? Or
this is something I can't answer. I'll be honest with you. I mean, if you look at the traction or the impact they had, I don't know, on news sites, on all that, you could probably say the most recent one was this Bucha thing, where I was accidentally not the only one, but one of the few people, and I think that also accidentally the first person who got to this site.
Yeah, I mean it's more or less the same answer as Vadim. I have little to no idea about the impact of my work, to be honest, and it makes me think about something that I think Mark Champion said earlier about the effort. So I feel that the impact of my work is the effort I put into it. There's a very nice quote actually from Martha Gellhorn, which said that all my life I've been throwing small pebbles in a pond without knowing if any of them will make any ripples. My responsibility was my effort. So I relate to that and I feel that. And another thing that it's related to this, it's when Trump started implying and basically just straight out saying that that Ukraine is the country that started the war, I think it filled me with frustration and anger as a journalist who has been covering what's been happening there, and I'm sure other journalists can relate to that, and it made me question my role there. It made me question. It made me ask myself what was the point of me going there for so many months and trying to show the world what's happening. If after 3 years of war, there's a new president in the White House who spins the narrative and who has, I don't know, 100 million followers on X, and who's the most powerful guy in the world, and a lot of people listen to him, and it made me question my role and my presence there. And the only answer that brought me a bit of comfort, and it still does, is that I just imagine what would have been if journalists weren't there in Ukraine, if Vadim wouldn't have taken the pictures in Bucha, if the world wouldn't have if there were no witnesses there, if there were no journalists there. So I do believe in the power of witnessing, because that's all we have, especially in this line of work where you cannot do war journalism from the office. So that's about it.
Just a point of information before we go to Alison. It is not possible for you or for Western, in a broad sense, journalists and photographers to go on the Russian side.
At the moment, no.
And so who are doing that? It's all Russians.
There was one lady, I can't remember her second name, Nana something, that shoots Heitman, that shoots with the Times for the New York Times, and she's based in Moscow. She has been on a number of organized trips to the front line, but apart from her, I have no
Russian organized.
Yes.
And just may I add, she went there illegally?
That I don't know. I've seen the pictures.
As in, if you look at it from the Ukrainian perspective, embedded with the Russian army, she crossed the border into Ukraine illegally. The same thing I've been charged with or accused by Russia when I went to the Ukrainian army, with the Ukrainian army into Kursk.
Rightly accused.
Yes, absolutely.
But just so for us personally, I don't know if it's possible for us to go to both sides. But just so we understand how an international news agency work, if we cannot do it, it doesn't mean that it's not being covered. Just because, for example, at AFP and at AP, also we have bureaus in Moscow, so they are the ones who are doing embeds with the Russian troops on the Russian part of the front line. So that's still covered. It's just not by us, and it shouldn't be by us all the time. It should be, it's a vast network.
Alison.
I would like to ask something, or I don't know, maybe to press Vadim to tell the story of how he got to Bucha, because this is, we talked a little bit about this back in the day. How did you manage to actually get to Bucha? It was a network of, you told me something about this, and I think it would be quite interesting for these people to understand.
I don't remember exactly the story. I mean, I just want to make sure that I'm thinking about the same thing you're thinking about. I mean, Bucha was off limits.
Yeah.
Because it was still under occupation, and we went on a first day with I don't know how to describe it, sort of a platoon that went to sweep
and to make sure that there's no
that the Russians are gone. That was on the first day, and we went from Irpin and went sort of neighborhood by neighborhood, they were looking for improvised devices, things that people leave behind when they withdraw from a certain area. Yeah, mines and things like this, up to the Hostomel airport, which was the scene of one of the first battles when the Russians tried to land a force there and use it as a base to attack Kyiv. Yeah. And so we had been once there and found the road, made friends at the checkpoint, everything. I mean, it was not organized. It was, by people we knew from other, and, convincing them and all that. And the second day, we used the same entry point, and we had heard that there is a site of an execution, but there was no way to find it. And it was, again, pure luck. I mean, we drove past a guy on a bicycle. We were like losing hope that we can find it. And we drove past a guy that was an old gentleman who was riding a bicycle. And we thought, I said, why don't we ask this guy? And everybody was like, oh, come on. I mean, how would it? And we just stopped. And he was like, yeah, sure. I mean, they killed nine people. It's right here. And it was literally 50 meters in the backyard of an old administration building. But we had drove on that road. We drove on that road during the day several times, and there was no, obviously you wouldn't know. And what was slightly shocking is that, I mean, because there were bodies lying in the street everywhere. I mean, civilians were shot for fun, out of boredom, just like that, and you couldn't retrieve them and bury them, was how casual people were about this. I mean, yeah, sure, there's 9 guys there in the backyard. So.
We're nearly the end of the session, but we've still got time for a couple of questions if anybody wants to bring something else up.
Thanks for sharing that, and sorry for bringing you back.
Okay, we'll end it there with enormous thanks to
Well, thank you.